Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Our first story about the little Napoleon of a manager who must learn to listen to his team. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Do you want my job? To make a long story short, I used to work in a warehouse tracking tools and materials for a company that did welding and pipe fitting. We would occasionally sell our decommissioned fleet trucks in pretty rough shape for around $500. One day I was told to take a tire off one of these trucks and have a new one put on because it kept losing air. I threw the tire in the back of a truck and noticed a nail sticking out of it. Having a background in the automotive field, I knew this could be easily fixed, and I knew we had a tire plug kit somewhere in the warehouse. I went to the manager and asked if he knew where the plug kit was, to which he replied, "Do you want my job? Here, take my wallet. Take my job." I got the hint, fell in line, and proceeded to take the tire to the very busy tire shop, where I got paid to take a 2-hour nap while the company paid to put a $150 tire on a $500 truck. And our next story. Shop owner ends up in hot water for being a crook. Cast: me, yours truly, F, friend and coworker, B, boss or B-turd, you choose. Some backstory. Sorry for the long one, but there are things I need to make clear. This happened 10 years ago. I was 18, and this was during a spring period of my junior year. I wanted to get money for a new mobile phone and a school trip to Austria in order to practice on my German. My major was math and German. My dad didn't want to give me the necessary 350 euros for them, so I got me a job at a local tobacco shop. It was right across my block of flats, so it was taking me 2 minutes to run from my flat to the shop. No big deal. The owner of the shop, B, was a short man in his 40s, a man with good demeanor, or so I thought. He owned 4 other shops and needed workforce. We initially agreed for a payment of 15 euros a day. I would work 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. 4 days a week, including Saturdays and Sundays, so I'd not miss on my schooling. He would pay me once every 2 weeks and even stated he'd give me a raise after the first month. So I started in the beginning of March. I was working with 2 other people, 45-ish-year-old fat woman with a whining character, who would usually take the morning shifts from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., and a 19-year-old beautiful girl, F. Also, I need to mention that at the time, the store would share a toilet with a courier service office. It's important for later. There's one more thing I need to add. My country's labor codes state that employees must get a double payment during official holidays and also have at least 12 hours of rest between shifts. This is also important for later. So initially I was doing fine. I did a couple of days training. I learned how to operate and clean the coffee machines, the juice machine, the cashier, the receipts. I needed to press enter 3 times to enter the products in the system and take a receipt. This is important for later as well. It was quite easy because I operated fast with money and calculations and overall was quite trustworthy. Overall, the job wasn't hard, and I had free Wi-Fi, so I'd often bring my laptop to watch YouTube videos or listen to music online. At the time, smartphones were expensive as hell, and I had a regular mobile phone. My first 2 fortnightly salaries were okay. I was supposed to get 120 euros each. I got something like 110. But this was because I'd get random snacks from the shop when I got hungry, and B would deduct all from my payment, which was okay. Also, B initially wanted me to add the tip to the cashier. The tip was the change, 5, 10, 20 cents, which the customers would often not take, and in the end it'd add up to a few euros. But we agreed for it to remain for me, as the other employees would also take it with them. A month has passed. It was April. The days started to get warmer, and B had permission to set a couple of coffee tables with chairs in front of the shop so customers could drink their coffee and have a chat with a friend. I was instructed to take the tables and chairs back into the shop around 20 o'clock, and a sign was posted on the front door. So here started the problems. After my first month, I approached B for a raise. He said I was still a bit rusty and to wait at least 2 more weeks. He also gave me the contract to sign. I never got a copy, but since this was my first job, I didn't know I needed one. I never got a raise as well because I was losing his customers. B-turd. I had good relations with our colleagues at the courier office, but once I had a problem with them because I took out the trash but forgot to clean the juice machine. I threw the orange remains in the toilet, but one tiny piece of orange seemed to remain on the edge, so I was yelled at by B and was fined 10 euros. There were 2 other times I was fined 10 euros for forgetting to turn the outside lights off and for forgetting to put the daily report in the shop log. But this was my fault. My second coworker would also report me for missing a trash bag or failing to put the items in the fridges in order, but she never took out the trash and never tidied up, so this actually went against her. I never had problems with F. I had problems with some of the local customers, though. I live in a considerably poor neighborhood, and there are different types of scumbags who live there. There's this group of 10 people in their late 40s and 50s who were alcoholics and who were sitting at the coffee tables until dark as if this was the local pub. When I asked them to leave because it went past 20 o'clock and I had to take the tables into the shop, I was yelled at by the drunks and later by B as well because I was losing frequent customers for being rude and disrespectful to them. Even though I almost ended up in a knife fight with one disgusting animal. The cherry on the cake was the incident when an entitled mother, because she'd sent her child to buy her beer and cigarettes and I refused to sell the items to him because it's against the law, I then got a fine of 30 euros by B and was pretty pissed. At the last week of my work, in the beginning of June, B asked me to go and work in other shops, stating there was a sick employee and he needed me there. It was Friday. I ended up working from 15 o'clock to 22 o'clock in the local shop. Then he took me to one of the other shops where I worked from 23 o'clock to 8 o'clock on Saturday. Then he asked me to work from 23 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Sunday and wanted me to be in at 16 o'clock in my local shop. But I refused because I was exhausted. He threatened to not pay me extra and we agreed to go to the shop at 19 o'clock after I got some sleep. I was supposed to get at least 12 hours between the shifts, as I mentioned above, but he didn't care. After this exhausting time, B wanted to change me to another shop, but I refused due to my schooling and also because I wanted to remain in the same shop, but he got some new workers and said I would not be working until the end of the week. Eventually, I understood he terminated my contract and also refused to pay me for the last 2 weeks, nearly 200 euros in total with the extra shifts. There are a few more things which are important. Some of my free days I spent with F. She was at work and I was in the shop with her, having a chat and being together, because she had some mild form of anxiety and didn't want to remain alone. During this time, I noticed she used a different combination to enter the products in the system, enter, enter, 1, enter. I understood that this would enter the items in the system, but would not send the information to the receipt machine, and this would not get a receipt, and thus the boss would not have to pay VAT for the items. I also understood later that he asked for everyone else to do it, everyone but me, because I wanted everything to be legal. There was a new coworker whom B liked and tried to seduce. He was overtly sexist and wanted to hire attractive girls, whom to pay more and to be more clingy towards them. I didn't like that at all, so the new coworker ended up being very crooked and actually stole around 400 euros, which B blamed me for and said he had camera recordings, but this was all BS. So after all of this, I was angry and wanted revenge. Initially, I spoke to a friend who advised me to report him to the local labor inspection office, which I did. It almost ended with a lawsuit, and I was threatened by my boss that this would cost me dearly, so I backed my claim because I needed a clean legal certificate because I was going to the Bulgarian Naval Academy in a year and didn't want to jeopardize my future. My dad got softer on me and paid for my phone and the trip, saying I earned them because it wasn't my fault for why I didn't have the money. It was the moron of a boss. Years have passed. I got discharged due to medical reasons and came back to my hometown. I got a new job and was living with my father until I get better. The shop was still owned by this jerk, and he was going around town in a very expensive car. So I decided to turn all of this against him. I knew some of his workers as we grew up together, and they complained how much of a crook B was. I hated him for being so cheap on his employees and so large in personal spending. We started a rumor about how bad of a boss he was and to stay away from him. Word got out, and he not only started losing assistants, but no one would want to ask him for a job. One time, police were nearby. Someone had broken one of the shop's large windows with a stone and stolen a large amount of cigarettes. The losses were for about 1,000 euros. From what I understood, B also had to pay for a new window, and that would cost him more. Apparently, he'd pissed off a lot of people. I also suggested to some of his former employees, whom I knew vaguely, to file individual reports against B in the local labor inspection office, like I did all those years ago. I explained they would definitely rattle his cage. A lot of reports went in, and I understood there was a major inspection of all shops. They could also use my information, but I asked them to take me off the case. I didn't want any recompense, only to watch him burn. Eventually, B disappeared. What I understood is that he ended up with a lot of problems because he was charged with mistreatment of his personnel, violation of the Labor Codex, felony tax evasion, and a number of other charges. So far, I know that he's somewhere in the UK while the business is handled by his brother and his wife. His shops were cut in half due to the lack of workers, and I understand they were about to close another one as well. His business is not as successful as before, and I also understood it's frequently inspected. I guess I'm the mastermind behind all this, and to be honest, I'll be extremely happy when he gets what he deserves from being a crook and a piece of trash. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.